now we'll do a panel. Yoav, you are on the panel. And we have Chris here. Yep, that's Chris. And two speakers on Zoom. I'm not sure how to turn them on the screen, but... Thanks. Okay, we'll wait for Zoom setup, then we'll get started. In the meantime, people can think about questions they want to ask. Do we have more mics? Just give me 1 second. Okay, let's just get started.
Thank you. I have a question for Ryan. You said that you deployed your pre-crime approach since May. How many of those messages you have filtered out because they were malicious?
None of them. Now, a message, if pre-crime were to catch something, it would mean that there was a bug. And so right now it's active in Stargate. And so it would have prevented a bug in Stargate's code, right? So it has stopped nothing, but it has checked everything since May.
Hey, everyone. Not a specific question to any person, but broadly for the panel. So with the Nomad hack, everyone was calling it, the first decentralized hack because it happened with a bunch of people. And I never really saw a good explanation as to why that happened and why there wasn't, why one person couldn't come in and drain the whole thing. I was curious if there was a technical reason for that or that's just how it went.
So they actually could have, if the attacker was sufficiently competent, they could have drained the whole thing in probably 10 minutes. So I think the reason it kind of went on so long was because the attacker didn't do that, and then it was kind of released publicly that you could replace the addresses at some point, and then we saw like a bunch of people join in.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah. Isaiah Washington from CoinFund. Thank you guys so much. Really appreciate it. Question on bridge aggregation. I know you guys aren't bridge aggregators particularly, but clearly seems to expand the utility of an app developer or even a user being able to choose between characteristics that you pointed out, Layne, that may be prioritized, maybe deprioritized when choosing a bridge, but definitely seems to significantly expand the attack surface in terms of how an attacker may exploit multiple bridges, maybe even at once through an aggregator. Curious if that's the right way of thinking about it, if there are nuances to make that assumption false, or how you guys think about it.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly how they would be able to attack multiple bridges at once just by using an aggregator. But my general opinion on aggregators is they are packaging up they're taking on the responsibility for understanding the technical details of all of these different protocols that they're aggregating. And they're doing that to provide the user some positive user experience for whatever benefits that may be. I believe the aggregators have to be really strongly opinionated about the bridges that they include in their aggregation. And they should keep in mind that the worst user experience you can have is that all of your funds are stolen or worthless.
Yeah, that's a very good point, and I think the LayFi example I showed was exactly something like this, where the aggregator was not opinionated about which bridges get used, so it could call something that isn't even a bridge, and still put the funds exposed.
All right, so I've got a question for Ryan on the library upgrades. So just to expand on that a bit, is that something that's intended for only specific use cases, or could that be used in like a wide array? And if so, is it possible to do things like do upgrades for liquidity pools with libraries without like separating those pools in the same way you would for a migration? Or just curious to hear more about what the trade-offs would be.
Yeah, so I guess the library upgrades are great for protocols, right? Like things that are built on top of them, where you're not changing the underlying interface, but you might be adding new features or optimizations and things like that. That all messaging protocols and any type, it could not be messaging, but any type of something that's composable that things are built on top of that aren't necessarily funds. Like LayerZero is a message primitive moving messages. It's not moving actual assets at its underlying base, right? It's just moving a generic message. So we're able to, people can opt into different libraries that do that kind of validation messaging. So I don't know if it would work. It's not as going to work as seamlessly, say, with liquidity pools, because that's not all one person's liquidity. So you each liquidity, you could do it, but you would probably have every person who has money in a pool would need to migrate that liquidity. So it kind of already exists in existing pool migrations with, like, I think what Uniswap does and SushiSwap did before. And so I guess it doesn't directly translate there.
Okay. I had a question also on the upgrade path, and I think it's going to be to everybody. But I'll start off, Ryan, just with your experience on that. Have you done this? Have you done some upgrades this way? And if so, or in terms of planning, sometimes it can be hard to get people to be the first person to kind of stick their neck out. So how do you actually get that ramp to kind of start occurring? And I was going to ask you that. Then I thought for the other people, if we could ask, do people think this is a good thing to do? And are we going to see upgrades kind of taking on that design pattern?
So right now, most applications on LayerZero select default. So they automatically opt into new upgrades. But imagine they have the flexibility to not do that. And that's important. I think most newer applications want to take advantage of the new features that LayerZero Labs comes out with, whether it be ZK technology in the future for our validation libraries, or gas optimizations, or any other features that we come up with. And probably most likely, like blue chip applications building on top will not want to take on that risk, and will likely opt to choose things that have stood the test of time, and then see how it succeeds. The newer libraries succeed over time before they opt into it, like I kind of went over in the presentation. So I think you'll always have people who want to be on the bleeding edge, in the same way, like with open source software, people are always testing out the latest and greatest Ubuntu, while people who use Ubuntu for work use the LTS usually because they don't want to deal with it breaking on them. And so same kind of concept applies here.
For Hop, Hop is not upgradable. So it's kind of like Uniswap, where if we're going to deploy a new version, we're going to deploy a completely new set of contracts. People will be able to opt in by just pointing to those contracts. We do have some modular components that kind of act as their independent contracts, and those can be swapped in and out. But ultimately, it's not upgradable.
So first, I really like the idea of if a contract is upgradable, then make it possible to opt out or to opt in. I'm not sure actually which is better, because in some cases, you can have a protocol that is not managed well or a bit negligent, and there's a security fix, there's a security upgrade, and you miss it. On the other hand, you don't want to be exposed to it. So I think it would be great if it would be configured. Like, for example, something that is not a bridge but implemented a similar pattern is, I think, the rocket pool mini pools. In the contract, the contract gets upgraded it gets upgraded centrally by governance, but it's possible for anyone in the mini pool to opt out and then to apply upgrades manually. So I think this kind of pattern would allow protocols that are more diligent to opt out of upgrades, while others might want to upgrades. But I'm frankly not sure which approach would be better in this case.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great to have the optionality. I do think that as we would see that applied practically, there would be a lot of people who just either kind of default into the upgrades, so it's practically the same as just having upgradable contracts, or they kind of get forced into it because the majority of people have moved on and say they just don't have enough liquidity to continue operating on those old versions. So, I mean, I think optionality is incredibly important, and I'm excited to see how it plays out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're absolutely right, because last time I looked at a rocket pool, I think 0 contracts opted out.
Yeah.
Question for like hack recovery. So like earlier there was a mention about, I think it was like USDC kind of helping recover funds from like certain hacks. Just wondering like what do they do? Like is it kind of like the Tornado Cash where like they kind of like freeze funds, or like what kind of mechanisms do they use?
Yeah, exactly. They basically have the ability to freeze any account, and they're willing to do that if there are stolen funds.
Okay. Any other questions from the audience? I see one.
My kind of like my thought in the space is that there's kind of a misalignment of development incentives for bridges. Like they should be developed a lot more like execution layer infrastructure. It's very slow. It's tons of stuff depends on it. It should be very security driven, a very long and slow process. Whereas a lot of the time it's a lot of get rich quick schemes because there's so much money to be made. And so do you think that those kind of like misalignment of incentives exist in this space? And then do you guys have any thoughts on how to combat that and incentivize people developing bridges slowly and well?
I agree.
Yes, there is a strong misalignment. That's why I called for users to choose their bridges wisely, because unless the market demands security, what you're going to get is this get rich quick. There's no reason for a bridge to spend more time on security if users don't want it.
Yeah, I would also just add to that as you see bridges become more and more of this used infrastructure, like they truly do develop into their own messaging layer, you're going to see the development cycle slow down. That's just something that kind of happens naturally as there's more increased usage. Like right now, I'm sure that bridge volumes have been dropping across the board just because it's cheaper to do things on mainnet in a bear market. And why would you take on the extra risk when transactions aren't costing like hundreds of dollars on mainnet?
So I have another question, but just kind of a more fun, controversial, spicy one, which is how would you deal with a censorship scenario of, let's say, I'm moving funds that came from Tornado Cash, then through a bridge to another site, and let's assume hypothetically you do want to allow people to do that, purely hypothetically. Are there solutions to that challenge or different trade-offs that you would have to think through in terms of having a bridge that would be either resistant to censorship or maybe you're okay with that, and if so, why? I don't know.
So this has happened a few times with Hop already. Notably, the funds that were stolen from Wintermute with the kind of Gnosis Safe deployment hack got moved through Hop, and Hop is censorship proof, so there was nothing we could do. Wintermute team reached out to us, and there's really nothing we could do.
Yeah, I think all you can do is prevent it at the protocol layer. And so when people do come to you and say, hey, we need you to censor these transactions, you can say, I can't actually.
Yeah, this goes to the heart. I mean, it's a sort of a political question. It goes to the heart of what we believe in. If blockchain is about disintermediation, then the bridges should not become intermediaries who can decide to censor. It should be trustless infrastructure.
Yeah. So to add to that, I mean, we designed it and with LayerZero in mind of being completely censorship resistant. Things we do beyond anybody can move messaging, right? But we nonce order enforce all messages, so things can't be dropped. Packets can't be dropped. Like if nonce 10 comes and then 11 after that, 11 can't be delivered till 10 gets delivered, meaning that you have to stop all of LayerZero messaging or none of LayerZero messaging. And so it's an all or nothing thing. And since the contracts aren't upgradable, it means that even if someone wanted us or forced us to put a library out there that had censorship in it, applications can opt just not to use it. And that is the key thing. One of the key things I want to drive home about library upgrades is that not every application have to have the same parameters, right? Like we built it in a way because we might have new features to add in the future, but like there could be a LayerZero where there's a ZK rollup version, there's a ZK version, there's an optimistic version, there's the ultralight node version we have now, and applications can choose which security properties that fit their needs at any given time and still maintain the censorship resistance that LayerZero has.
Yep, that's great. In general, I'll add a couple of comments from me as well. I agree that bridges and the LayerZero chains and even layer 2s should be just infrastructure. They shouldn't be deciding what happens and what shouldn't. They shouldn't act as judge, jury, and executioners. So yeah, neutrality there. Like maybe we need a term, blockchain neutrality or something like that. That's super important. So apart from that, let's see if anyone else has anything, any question from the audience, or I'll throw in one mine. So we talked about a bunch of different types of bridges here, but there is another one which we didn't touch, or another type, which is, I think, super interesting, the Avalanche bridge, which is technically just an externally owned account, but they have some MPC off-chain. Has any one of you looked into their architecture? Chris, maybe you can comment on it.
I would say it's similar to kind of the multi-sig type bridges, because like ultimately someone still owns the Amazon account that is running the secure hardware wherever they're running that secure hardware. And if one of these state level actors or a sophisticated attacker can get that, or they can insert an employee in the organization, or which we've seen multiple times, then those funds could still be taken.
Yes, I agree. So what I said about multi-sig bridges holds for all multi-sig bridges.
That's a good statement. So I think that is it for questions. Thanks panelists, all of you, for being here. It was a super interesting session, and we got to learn a lot.